everyone, it's Laura, and I hope you're all doing well. So for those of y'all who are new to my channel, I'm a registered dietitian, and I figured today I would talk about a certain topic I get asked about quite a bit, and it's how do I educate my clients and my patients based on certain beliefs that I have about food and nutrition. So if you're interested, then keep watching. So as a dietitian in my schooling, so at Auburn is where I did my undergrad, and then also at Rush, which is up in Chicago, that's where I did my internship. In both educational experiences, we had counseling education, so we got taught how to counsel patients and in order to be the most effective and to help create change within that person. And so a lot of my beliefs about counseling and a lot of the methods, I shouldn't say beliefs, methods that I use when talking to patients and clients comes from my educational experience. And I was taught motivational interviewing. And so for those of y'all who aren't familiar with that, it's the idea that it is very client focused and that the client deep down knows what they should be doing. They may not have the education that they need, which is where we come into play, but they know kind of in their diet and in their lifestyle where they could improve upon. And so when I start educating someone, I open up the platform for them to tell me what's been going on. And I never ever push my beliefs on other people. Because I have found if you talk to any dietitian, whether they've been practicing a year or whether they've been practicing 20 years and they've done a substantial amount of education, you do not induce change. Change does not occur by force. So if you come in like the food police, if you come in trying to tell people what to do and you need to change this and you need to eat that, then you literally see a physical reaction within that person and you see them just shut down and they stop listening to you. And so it is very, very important, one, to build rapport with that person, so to make them feel comfortable, but then also to meet them where they're at. And so if you come in, start preaching and start, getting onto them for you came into the hospital because your sugars were 600, you know better than to drink Coke, you can't be drinking Coke, why are you drinking Coke? If that's how you approach patients, then you are not going to be effective at all, and you just need to go home because you're going to do more harm than good. And so, like I said, the idea is to meet the person where they're at. And so saying open-ended questions, not yes or no questions. So saying things like, have you thought about lifestyle changes that you're interested in making? Are there certain things that you have questions about? Are there certain things you've heard in the media or heard from your friends that you want to ask me about? Now's the time. And a lot of times educations go so smoothly because even my patient population, very low income, their education level typically is super low. So all of our education material is at a 4th grade reading level. And so 99% of my patients didn't finish high school, much less go to college or do any continuing education. And so a lot of it also is knowing where that patient is coming from. And you can't know that unless you talk to them and get to know them a little bit. And I'm not saying spend 30 minutes hearing their life story, but just kind of understanding where they're coming from, understanding have you ever received nutrition education before, learning where baseline, where they're at. And so, for instance, if I go into a patient's room and they're a newly diagnosed diabetes, or say they've had diabetes for 10 years, I don't assume anything. I don't assume that they know anything, because you know what assuming does? And so I literally go in and I ask them, do you understand what diabetes is? Tell me, how you view it. Tell me how you understand what it is. Do you know what a carbohydrate is? Can you give me examples? And just kind of getting a little bit of knowledge about where they're at. And then from there, I strongly recommend them only making 1, maybe 2 small changes. Because when you go in there and you give them a list of all these things that they need to change and all these things that they need to do, that's great. And it's a lot of times important and vital to their health that they make those changes. But at the same time, I emphasize this is a list of a lot of different healthy options and healthy changes that you can make. Let's pick one for now. Let's work on that for now. And then once you've got a solid grasp on that one, then we'll move on to another one. Because motivation when it comes to food and exercise, it fades. You can't rely on motivation to make healthy changes. And so as a result, you have to make small changes that become habits. And so then those habits, when they're habits, they don't rely on motivation because it's automatically just what you do. And so a lot of times what we'll start with is, I really like to start with beverages because it's an easy way to make a healthy impact on the human body. If patients are consuming a lot of juices, a lot of sodas, a lot of high sugar beverages, then we focus more on healthier alternatives. Something else I'll typically focus on is fruit and vegetable, one or the other. Do you like fruit? Are you aware of how healthy they are? And same with vegetables. A lot of times they'll ask me, is canned okay? So we go into canned and, make sure that it's in water, make sure it's limited added sugar, or same with salt, make sure that it's low in salt, no added salt, and things like that. And so the education in the hospital is super, super basic. There's not a lot of depth into it. And honestly, the same is said for outside the hospital. So even if you have an hour with a client, making a whole list of all these changes that they need to make long-term isn't going to be effective. It's more effective to make one, like I said, maybe two goals for themselves, achieve those goals within a 1 month period, and then follow up and see them again and make new goals. And hopefully by that time, those one or two goals have become habits so you can move on. Because that's how change is made. It's not made by putting your beliefs on other people, because as dietitians, we have a lot of knowledge up here, but putting it into practice and educating patients, that's really where our job lies, and learning what's the most effective methods and what's not. And you do, like I said, you do learn about all this in school, but you don't become good at it until you practice it. And I know a lot of my coworkers, and at times me, we don't want to go and do that education, or we're not excited for whatever reason. We have our own stuff going on. We don't feel like going and doing that education. But those 15, 20-minute sessions in the hospital, if they take away one thing, because they have so much coming at them, their medications are getting changed, they have this doctor, that doctor, they can't even tell you the name of their nurse. The hospital experience oftentimes is just a blur for people. So if they can leave the hospital and make a small change, even if it's as easy as cutting back on the amount of sugar that they're putting in their coffee in the morning, if that's the one thing that they take away, then I'm happy if they make any change at all. And so when I get those questions about people saying, how do you educate people, how do you educate patients and set your beliefs aside, it's really not that hard at all, to be quite frank. And I'm able to set what I do aside from what that person is doing, because I'm not that person. And some things are pretty simple, and pretty easy, like obviously certain processed foods, processed meats like salami and things like that. If they bring it up, I will say, those aren't the healthiest options. We would prefer for you to choose lean proteins. And those include things like X, Y, and Z. I don't want them to remember the dietitian as the food police, which I feel like the longer that I'm in this profession, the more that stigma of our profession is decreasing. I feel like as a profession, we're getting better about not being known as the food police, but I want them to have a pleasant experience with the dietitian, and to actually request for them to see us again the next time that they come in so that I can follow up. So anyways, that was a long little spiel But I get asked this a lot, so I wanted to make a whole video about it and kind of explain where I'm coming from, because no one can really argue with, drinking more water, decreasing refined sugar, increasing fruit, increasing vegetables, increasing whole grains, increasing lean protein. It's basic nutrition. It's really not rocket science, and that's the basis. That's nutrition 101. And that doesn't defer from anything that I believe, if that makes sense. So I hope this helped y'all out, especially if you're interested in becoming a dietitian and you're kind of wary about the field and all that jazz. Hope this helped you out. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them below, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.